Yeah, that's just my one thought is what happens if someone that lives in my town stumbles across it and says, "Oh my gosh, that's my kid's teacher," and freaks out about it. So I would
Since
rather.
you're hesitant, let's not use the video.
Okay,
That's
so
that's my gut is telling me that you're not comfortable
yeah,
with it, so
yeah, I'm not comfortable
let's
advertising.
not.
I want to be comfortable to advertise that. I really do. But I work with people's kids and they have to trust me and I want them to trust me. And a lot of them have such a preconceived idea of who and what an atheist is that if they know that about me, that I will lose credibility with them and they will think I'm a bad influence. And that's the last thing I want.
So the first question is, how do you define yourself as an atheist?
Okay, I define myself as not holding a religious belief. I would like to just out and say I believe there is no God, but I don't want to accept and adopt the burden of proof because I recognize that I can't prove that there is no God. So I just define myself as not a theist or without theism. Yeah, when you recognize the burden of proof and you know that you can't disprove a negative, neither prove nor disprove, no one wants to take on that responsibility regardless of my own conviction and how I feel. I don't want that responsibility.
Right, because feelings are not
Oh,
reliable.
absolutely not.
Of
No,
course.
because I
Yeah.
was a Christian for 26 years. So I felt one day, once upon a time, I felt as though everything in the Bible was gold and should be followed to a T. So no, I don't trust my feelings. I trust evidence. Can I validate and verify? So that's how I go.
It's kind of funny whenever I talk to another atheist, which is relatively rare
Mm-hmm.
since I don't know anyone actually in person.
Okay.
And whenever I do talk to someone who is atheist, they always come from a religious background. They always had a belief.
Yeah.
And with me, it's kind of weird because I never had a belief. I don't come from, well, my family is religious,
Mm-hmm.
but it never really happened with me. I'd never actually believed in a higher power. So it's always kind of weird, kind of interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put
Yeah.
it.
Well,
But
I think that's fascinating because, like, as a former Christian, I feel a lot of my strong disdain for religion comes from experiences I've had. Not that they were negative, but I feel like it makes me passionate about my lack of theism. So sometimes I've imagined, well, what if I didn't ever have this, what if I never was a Christian? Would I still feel as passionate right now about the harm that religion does to society or the harm religion can do to an individual or just a child's psyche? Like, I don't know if I would be as passionate about it. So I'm impressed when I meet someone who hasn't who or wasn't raised religious who really does identify and feel convicted as an atheist, I suppose, to be out about it.
yeah, I mean, I think you would still have those feelings, negative feelings towards the destruction that
Mm-hmm.
some religions can have, but maybe not, perhaps not.
Yeah, I mean, there was this transition of anger. Like for a while, I mean, I was angry because I felt, oh my gosh, lied to, and years wasted, and time wasted, and emotions wasted. I felt guilt unnecessary for things that aren't even bad. So I maybe I would have felt equal amount of conviction, but without that transitional angry phase.
What grade and what subject do you teach?
So I teach fourth grade, which is all discipline. So interdisciplinary, fourth grade, 9, 10 year olds. Yeah, I know on my profile it does say biology because I do have a master's in biology education for grades 5 through 12. So I am certificated for biology 512, but I actually have three endorsements on my certificate. Um, so K through 8 interdisciplinary and SPED. I also can do special ed K-12 and then biology 512.
What exactly does that entail? Usually, like on a day-to-day
My
basis.
fourth grade life.
Hmm.
So if we didn't have COVID, my fourth grade life would typically be greeting the kids, getting them started with math, that type of thing, just getting them situated to start their day. Um, first and foremost, just showing kindness, happy to see them, wanting them to make an investment in their education. So wanting them to get out any silliness. So we'll have kind of a nice little start to our day. My schedule, they right off the bat, they go to specialists in the morning, and then I have that time to plan. We spend a lot of time on math. I'm a huge math fan, so we spend a lot of time on math. Lots of times I will let the kids sometimes eat lunch with me. So like in small handfuls of kids. So sometimes it might be me giving up my lunch to socialize and spend time with the kids. And then we do history. We do Washington State specifically. And then we have like reading and literature time in our day. And we don't have a specified science time in our day, but I absolutely make time for it within our reading block or our ELA, English Language Arts block. Lots of times I'll use science material, like, okay, it's a reading lesson, but we are reading about the water cycle or something along those lines.
Okay, very cool. It kind of takes me back to grade
Yeah,
school.
it's a fun little
Hearing all
life.
that.
I love the age group of my students. They're so sweet. They're old enough to understand and have wonder and awe about the world, and still young enough that I can make an impact in their little personalities. So it's perfect age group for me.
What a wonderful time to be
Oh
alive.
my gosh, yeah.
Has a student ever asked you about God or a religion?
Oh yes, yes. You know, do you believe in God? Do you go to church? Yeah, and I my first year I was pretty blunt with my responses. Sometimes that actually caused more problems. Blunt, not by saying no, I don't believe in God, but blunt with saying, like, well, which God? There's thousands. Which one are you talking about? Which I've grown out of that. I don't feel like that's a proper response in any debate now, actually, but especially not to a child, because I knew exactly who they were referring to. So now I kind of skirt around it. I might say, like they'll ask, do you go to church? Or last week I was at church. Do you remember this or this or this? And now I try to redirect it really quickly. So I have said things like, I went to church as a child. Yes, I used to go to church, or I don't go to church now. Or, hey, on that note, check out this book I have. You might find it interesting. And hand them, I have a whole bunch of mythology books in my class, hand them a mythology book. Not that I'm saying that what they're thinking is a myth, but, I'm just thinking if they were interested in gods, here's a book about gods. So I try to skirt around it. I want to be just outright and blunt, but I know I live in such a small community with really hardcore Christians. There's 17 churches in my town, and there's only 3,000 people. There's no reason 3,000 people need 17 churches. But even if you don't go on a regular basis, people still want to think that you're in some way religious. So I am definitely afraid of the reaction from the community if they heard the word atheist and my name in the same sentence, because their ideas of who and what an atheist is. And I know that right now I have Christians, honestly, that request me as their child's teacher, just based off reputation. I am a proud teacher. But they'll request me as their teacher. And I know that would disappear. I know they wouldn't request the atheist teacher. So.
Right, because of the stigma.
Because of the stigma. They'll think she's going to brainwash the kids or sneak in her sneaky atheist agenda. So, yeah, I worry about that.
And I guess in fourth grade, you're probably not teaching much of biology, I would assume, right?
I actually had an after-school evolution club, which I didn't call it after-school evolution club. It was just an after-school biology the parents knew exactly what I was teaching, because their child came to me with questions. So there's not biology in the curriculum that's mandated by the state. So there's no specific standard for biology in fourth grade. Um, but I will carve out time. Like I'll do an after school club for those types of lessons, which is free time. Yeah, which is my own time, which I'm not getting paid for that. It's just something I'm passionate about. And when a kid comes up to me and asking about, natural selection or something that I know is going to fascinate them, I had one kid asking about not natural selection, but thank you, but like time, like how did things change over time? How would one animal become another animal? So I wanted to honor that question. So we did spend about, I don't know, 2 weeks where he would stay after school for an hour, and we really studied more about being fit for your environment, actually, more than anything, because as we were going along, that piqued his interest the most. So I kind of let him be the guide. But yeah.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing that the teacher would take the time, that you would take the time to after school each day to help that child and really learn about what they wanted to
Hey,
learn.
thank you.
I really admire
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I know we talked a little bit on Twitter about this, but I'm going to ask it
Okay.
specifically for the interview here. Does anyone at the school know that you are an atheist?
There are a couple other teachers, but it is very low key. So there is a first grade teacher who she's also an atheist, and she knows that I am, but she knows I told her in a way like, oh, I was picking up vibes from her, and I just kind of low key said, oh, I'm not very religious, and she kind of looked at me and was like, oh my gosh, neither am I. And I'm like, well, I'm really, really not religious. And she says, yeah, I don't believe any of that crap. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you. So yeah, I identify as an atheist, and she said the same. But we were very kind of tiptoey into it, because it's just not something you outright say, especially when our principals walk around with a mug that says God, Jesus on it, or during staff meetings points to the sky referencing Jesus and God all the time. So it was definitely nice to find her. And then I just recently found my second atheist friend, who actually lives about a mile from me, and it's been wonderful. She works at the school as well. She teaches STEM, and we are just so like-minded, and like politically, and just knowing that she is also an atheist is it's wonderful to have people right there within my own building that I know are like-minded and also skeptical and critical thinkers, unlike our science person who thinks that the earth is 1,000 years old. So yeah.
Oh,
I know, not even 6,000, like so many young earth creationists say, but our science specialist refuses to talk about dinosaurs, won't teach the students about dinosaurs because the earth is young. I'm just flabbergasted. That's the community in which I live.
wow, that is really unbelievable.
How can you even have your job? How can you be a science specialist and I like her as a person, I really do. And everybody, all the other teachers are okay with this. Like there's 80 teachers in my building. Well, a series of buildings in my elementary unit. So like how can we tolerate that? What if I was teaching, or what if I was the reading specialist and I was illiterate? Would anyone go for that? So
I hope they wouldn't.
I hope they wouldn't either, and I don't know why we'll tolerate it with science.
Is this a public school we're talking
Yes, it
about?
is. It is a public school. It's a public school.
That's the only type of stuff that happens at the private schools, at the religious schools. That kind of stuff doesn't happen in public schools in my area. So I guess I'm kind of fortunate in that respect. I didn't know there was public schools out there in this country that still are like that.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable to me.
Within my team, I'm a fourth grade teacher. There are four fourth grade teachers. And within my team, I'm an atheist. There's a Jew, a Jewish, like he's a practicing Jew, Catholic, and evangelical Christian. Now, the evangelical Christian, she actually was my son's teacher. And when my son was in her class, he came home from school one day as a sweet little fourth grader and just looked up at me and said, did you know that people used to live to be 900 years old? And I just like was so taken back. Of course, some kid at recess had to tell him this bull, like, oh, obviously someone's talking about Noah's Ark or something. Okay, where did you hear that? What kid told you on the playground? No, he heard it in the classroom. He said, well, Andy and said teacher were talking about how old people used to live. Andy brought it up, had a question about it, and she agreed with everything he said and said that he was right. So even though the teacher didn't explicitly teach it, she confirmed it through her actions and allowing the conversation to take place in front of all the students. So I do care about her. I'm a teammate. I work with her and I really know her heart is good, but she completely blurs the lines of what's acceptable and appropriate for a public school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just wild.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a better way to teach it than that. But like, even if you do feel the need to touch on it, especially if a child brings it up, you could say certain people believe this,
Yes.
and this is what science has told us throughout the years. This is that argument, and then just leave it at that.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. And even until last year, we would take the fourth graders Christmas caroling. And now that I'm on the team, I don't rile things up, but I definitely have made suggestions. And I'm very careful, like, hey, maybe we should take this and this and this song out of our program. Maybe we shouldn't be singing "O Holy Night" or "O Little Town of Bethlehem." Maybe we shouldn't sing these things about the round yon version song, like our mother and child. Like maybe not. So we did change our song, so it's just Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph, and more traditional Christmas, like kid, less Christian Christmas songs. But in 2018, 2017, we still had those songs on our list. We were still going to like old folks homes with a group of fourth graders and singing about angels we have heard on high. Like, are you kidding? But okay.
I mean, it's endearing and sweet, but perhaps just not those songs.
I know, like, when we changed it and now we just sing Jingle Bells and those types, the old folks people just want to see kids singing. Like, the content isn't so important. But I mean, I love the idea of Christmas caroling because I actually love all things Christmas. And I'm not offended by those songs at all. Like, I'm not bothered by them. But the way they would teach the fourth graders is a lot of the kids had never heard these songs, but a lady would come in with her guitar and she would teach the lyrics and talk about the meaning. And she would say, okay, now this shepherds quake at the sound. Okay, this is a shepherd and this is why they're quaking because, quake at the sight because he sees an angel. And wouldn't you quake too if you saw an angel? Like, yeah, I would, because any monster under the bed is going to terrify me. But
no kidding. Wow, that's definitely crossing the line.
I agree.
Singing a song to preaching.
Wow. Yes. So it's not just singing the song. It's like, absolutely, this is what the lyrics mean. So no, let's not do that. Let's just teach them the melody and carry on. And, so after I became part of the group and really saw that those things were happening, I'm definitely, I can't tattle to my principals because they would say, well, why aren't you singing this song too? And throw in another Christian song, being that they're so Christian. But yeah, there's not anyone to go to. Like, everyone is Christian. And if you go and say, hey, I have a problem with the program, they're going to say, why do you have a problem with the program? Like, what's wrong with it? It's so perfect and beautiful.
Sure. So you're kind of working from the inside out.
Yes, and I have to be sweet. I have to be sweet and just kind of do it very passively and tolerate so much. Tolerate so many things. Like, if, oh, hey, something really great happened in my classroom today and the principal points to the sky. It's like, no, I did that, motherfucker. God didn't do anything. That was me. That was all me and my skills. You point at me. So you have to tolerate a lot. Like, there was like a staff member that had cancer, and I hate that. That's so terribly sad. But getting the whole entire staff John 3:16 shirts is not cool. And it wasn't John 3:16. It was actually like a verse from Timothy, I think, but something about hope. Just like, no, no, how about not? So, and then if you don't wear it, then you look like you're not supporting the person.
Yeah, that'd be a. I would hate to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Do you wear it? Do you
Yeah,
not?
yeah.
Oh.
There's choices, and you have to go. You have to make a choice. Do I do something that makes me uncomfortable, or do I do something that makes me even more uncomfortable, which is putting myself in the spotlight for being a heathen? And I'm doing air quotes. You can't see it, for being a heathen, which just basically means I think for myself and don't accept their doctrine.
So I know we talked about how you probably wouldn't find it ideal if some of the other teachers, your bosses, etc., found out that you're atheist. But aside from the repercussions that could occur, so they could view you in a negative light, possibly even cost you your job.
Mm-hmm.
But that all of that aside, would you feel embarrassed by it?
Hmm. I have always, my personality is be the teacher's pet, do everything you're asked, always, be a good little girl. So I would feel like I disappointed people I care about, and I would hate that because I like to feel like, I don't know, like they admire me, like they like that I'm on board, that I'm a person that they value. So I guess I would feel saddened by the fact they are disappointed in who I am. They would be disappointed in think that I, for some reason, would be less in their sight. Um, so I don't know if embarrassment would be the right word. I think it would be more a feeling of sorrow.
Wow, that is really sad. I feel bad for asking
Oh
that now.
no, it's okay. I mean, I've contemplated all of that.
And I guess I kind of touched on what would happen if your students or their parents or your bosses found out. But if they did and they didn't fire you and things just kind of continued on, do you think that would cause problems in the classroom itself?
Hmm. You know, I don't even know. I do feel like there would be some parents that wouldn't want me to be their kid's teacher. I feel like perhaps the principals, I think one of them would be really concerned about the whole situation, but at the same time, they come to me so much for all types of things. Just not last year, the year before, I had 24 people observing me teach. And that's huge. You might have one or two a year. I had 24, and in one moment, there were five. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was five, and then another group of five. So there were 10 admins, so principals and superintendents from neighboring districts to watch me teach math. And it was I was showing the neighboring districts our math program, but the fact that out of all the teachers, they asked me to do it makes me certain that they know that I'm good at what I do. And I know it. So I feel like part of they would definitely have to weigh out the fact, oh my gosh, we're losing a strong teacher because we disagree with personal beliefs. I feel like I don't know. I don't know if they could afford to lose me. And I know that sounds arrogant. But honestly, like when COVID happened and everything shut down, they came to me and had me lead professional developments for the rest of the teachers. So that I know that they value my skill set. So I feel like if I was not who I am, then they might out me. They might push me out the door. But
Sure.
because
So if you were average,
if I was
they'd
average,
probably give you the
yes,
boot.
yes. But you know what? I have every year my evaluations say distinguished, and I'm proud of that. I work hard for that. I really, really work hard. So I think that comes out in my performance, and they see that, and they would know that they were getting rid of not just a hardworking teacher, but a teacher who loves her job and loves her students. So I don't know if they could fire me. Yeah, and I don't mean to sound arrogant. I just know that I'm an asset.
Sure. And not to mention, legally speaking, they probably shouldn't.
Right. I mean,
But
they'd have
that's
to
a whole
conjure
nother
something up.
rabbit hole.
Yeah, they would have to conjure something up, and I think that might be too hard.
You mentioned you taught lessons on mythology.
Yes.
How did that go? What was that
Okay,
about?
so mythology is technically a minor standard for fourth grade, which means it is totally legal for me to touch that subject. So that's exciting because it is just a feature of English language arts, just as much as fables would be, or any other type of any other domain. So I definitely took time to, hey, let's really delve into this with school provided materials. We did read all about mythology, how to identify if it's mythology. And I don't think the kids too much made any connections between, oh, I go to church and wow, this sounds a lot like my Bible. But the defining characteristics of, is this mythology? Does it have like grand stories of the origin of space and time and the planet? Or are there talking animals? Are there characters with magical powers? So I don't think they made any connections, but perhaps they will later in life make those connections.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're teaching them something that they can carry on for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And hopefully it hits home with them.
I hope so. One of the things I really try to do is just to kind of teach them about their thinking, like to make them metacognitive thinkers, so that they are thinking about their thinking. Why am I thinking that? How did I come to that conclusion? So I have lessons where I'm very intentional with, can I give an example?
Yeah,
So like in our Washington State history book, we read about whale hunting. And after describing whale hunting, I ask a few questions, and then we generate pros and cons on the board. And we come up with these big lists of, okay, well, whale hunting, cons, it's cruel. There's enough meat in the market. We don't need to do that. The methods cause the whale to suffer. They are mammals. They're highly intelligent. So they come up with this list of reasons why we shouldn't. And then they also come up with a list of pros, like it's tradition for certain tribes. It is a source of food. There could be problems with overpopulation, so maybe there needs to be a decrease in the population. And they come up with a list of some pros and cons. And then I print off articles, and I divide the class in half. And one class gets to read the articles about the pros, and the other half gets to read the articles of the cons. And then we discuss our opinions. And I'm not surprised when the class who read the articles about the pro are all supporting of whale hunting, and the kids who read about the cons are all supporting or against whale hunting. But then they think we're just doing an assignment on whale hunting. But then we stop and we reflect and we look and think, why are you con? What were you exposed to that may have influenced your position? And why are these guys why are they pro? Why are there more pro people over here? What were they exposed to that may be influencing their thinking? And then they start to think about their thinking. Why am I thinking this? Why am I con? How did I become influenced to this? If we go and read the pro now, do you think that if you read the pro article now, will you be more likely to be neutral? Or do you think that because you are first exposed to the con articles, that you will stick with that because you will read those pro articles defensive, with a defensive mindset? So I think where was I going with this? Activities about thinking about your thinking and being metacognitive thinkers, and hopefully those little seeds that I'm planting with not necessarily just mythology, but to be aware of where did you get your ideas, what is influencing you to think that, how, if you're reading other material and you already have a preconceived notion, is that going to contaminate your ability to now change your mind?
I think we need those classes every step of the way, from elementary school all the way to college.
Yeah.
Because there are so many adults out there that don't understand it, that don't get it.
Right.
We would probably be in a much different political climate if adults understood all that. If they were aware of how and why they were being influenced and able to take that and understand it. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and that's really what compels me to really try to impress upon. I mean, it's a small group of kids, every year I have about 25 kids that I will hopefully leave a lasting impression upon. So little by little, in one little pocket of one conservative little county, even though I live in a blue state, it is still, I live in a conservative pocket.
I think you're making a difference, so I sure hope you are.
I hope so. I hope so. I actually had a parent ask me if I would please stay in contact with her son for the rest of his life. Or the rest of my life. So that to me, in those little moments, I feel really valued. Like, okay, the parent sees that I love her child through her son's, appreciation for me. So that makes me happy.
So Kanye West's platform kind of ties right in with your little conservative pocket that you live in.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on him?
You mean about like bringing prayer back or something?
Yeah, his whole platform that he's running on.
Yeah.
I would say a good chunk of it is all about bringing prayer back to the classroom. That's a huge part of it. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that involves taking Christianity and shoving it into our government where it doesn't belong.
Right.
But a big portion of that was specifically about prayer and in the classroom.
Yeah, I definitely have a problem with that. I don't care if a student wants to quickly close their eyes before they take a quiz, and that is going to make them have less anxiety. I, of course, would prefer for none of my students to have magical thinking. But I don't want to come across as the atheist. It's like, oh, prayer in school is bad and should all be squashed. It's irrelevant to me if it's not harming anybody else. When it becomes something that is like expected, I think it absolutely is a terrible idea. I can't stand Kanye, just right off the bat. I want to say that. There are people in my community. Once upon a time when I had Facebook and I had to just get rid of that, I was reading the parents in my community talking about the problems are, everything started when we took prayer out of school, gun violence and just every other problem that they're having with school, and they're associating it. And that whole correlation is not causation. They're just assuming that the downfall of mankind is because God is stripped from school. I love what the Satanic Temple did when are you aware of the story of when maybe it was the Church of Satan, but I think it was the Satanic Temple, when that church in Florida, or the school in Florida, allowed a table for religious material to be placed upon, like pamphlets and stuff. And
no, I'm not familiar.
Okay, so they, of course, they're playing the antagonist, and I love that they do this. Okay, sure. If you're going to allow religious pamphlets, then here's our seance coloring book. And
oh yeah, I do.
Okay,
yeah.
So I feel like my position would be very much, if prayer is going to be forced upon us in school, then I'm going to need a lot of candles and a pentagram, because I'll pray, but I'm not going to pray to who you're wanting to mandate. It's going to be meaningless for me, of course, because I don't believe any prayer has power other than calming your own anxiety, more like a meditative kind of like, oh my gosh, I just need to center because I'm stressing out.
Yeah, and it can be very effective for that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that prayer is actually doing anything as far as a deity.
Nope, absolutely not. No, it just means that I'm having a moment of extreme anxiety and I just need to quickly calm myself down for a minute. Let me suck my thumb or mumble to myself. So, yeah, I don't even say the Pledge of Allegiance, to be honest. So I don't like that they've inserted the words under God into the pledge. So it is mandatory that, for my school, that every morning stand and say the pledge. You don't have to say it. You don't have to stand. It's just the teachers are supposed to provide it for the students, an opportunity. But everyone does it. All the kids just do it because they've been told to in K1, 2. Um, I just stand in the back and say nothing. I give them the option to do it if they want to, but I don't partake.
Is it elementary school and like middle school? I think they tend to just kind of go along with
Mm-hmm.
whatever the teacher says, whatever
Yeah.
whoever
Yeah.
says.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I'm kind of going on a little tangent, personal tangent here, if you don't
No,
mind.
I love it.
I don't know if okay. Elementary school, middle school, I just kind of went along with it, right? And then in high school, I decided, you know what? It may not have been my irreligious part of me that didn't want to do the pledge. I didn't like the fact that under God was in it,
Mm-hmm.
but I was a bit of more rebellious, I guess you could say. You could say that I just was a bit anti-government in that stage of my life. Not that I am in that position right now. Well, maybe. I mean, Trump is president, but that's beside the fact. But I was just kind of angry
Yeah.
with uh, with the government at that point. Probably just me being a teenager. But I guess it was interesting because I wouldn't stand for the pledge, and for the first couple of years of high school, no teacher had a problem with that. But then once in my senior year, it was a study hall, and that I don't know if she was a teacher. I think she was like a hall monitor type
Mm-hmm.
person, some sort of staff. But she really had a problem. She was a feisty one. She wanted me to stand, and I didn't do it, and I would have went to the Supreme Court over it. It was
Wow.
just a
Yeah.
wild time to be alive, you
Oh
know.
my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. No, I had a student last year, actually, the only time I've ever had a student who didn't say the pledge. And she would stand with everyone else, but she would just stay quiet. And I mean, outside of Jehovah Witness, she actually, her dad is actually an atheist, and he's one of the other atheists in my community that I know. And he's on Twitter as well. So I can hook you up with him. You might like him. Um,
Yeah,
but it's
sure.
nice, so there's a couple teachers that know that I'm atheist. Every once in a while a parent might pop through, and maybe he wears an atheist hat everywhere. And we were in a play several years ago together, so I trusted him with like knowing that, oh yeah, I agree with you and identify the same. So just small little pockets of people.
That's awesome. I've never seen anyone in person wear any type of atheist gear ever, so it's
Yeah.
pretty cool that in your community that's actually a thing. I don't think anyone's bold enough around
he's
here, I
he's
guess
just
you could
really
say.
bold. Yeah, he wears his hat. His license plate says skeptic, and I think it's awesome that he, yeah, that he's so bold. Um, his oldest son was in the teacher that I told you about, my son saying 900-year-old people. His oldest son was also in that class, different year. But I remember when I had the daughter, she was, quick to tell me like, oh, he's a really strange man. He's a weird one. And I'm thinking, no, hun, you are, though you believe in 900-year-old people. And she didn't really realize that, outside of school, that I consider him a friend. So don't get offended if you hear this, Rick.
Well, what is the racial demographic of your classes?
Okay, so for our school district, let me just think of my own personal classes. I typically have about 25 kids. Usually I have mm, five of them are probably Hispanic. I may have one black student, and the
Hmm,
rest are white.
interesting. That is very similar to my community.
Okay.
And are you aware of kids that were ever bullied because of their race?
No, I am not aware of that. I have, um, you know what? Every protagonist in the books that I read to my kids, I typically have black protagonists or Hispanic protagonists most of the time, because I don't believe those students have felt like the main character of a book their teacher has ever read. So I rely a lot on Christopher Paul Curtis's books, and Esperanza is another book that has a Hispanic girl protagonist. And I feel like maybe it makes a difference. I don't see them ever being bullied, but I do see them taking pride in being able to relate and being identified. And I don't know. Yeah, I've not seen any of that. They're usually really well liked. They're just well liked students.
Good. It sounds like you're doing an awesome job.
I hope so.
In your district, it's probably not common, or maybe it's not even like in what's it called? The things that you're supposed to teach.
Standards, Common Core, like a standard.
Standards, yes, probably not in the standards. But I wonder if you ever touch on like racial divide or anything like that, like race or equality, for example.
I do. I do absolutely. Well, I like, and
Excellent.
most of the time it is when when I'm reading. Um, every day I set aside 20 minutes and I just read to my students and they listen and they love. Most of the time, if I say what's your favorite time of the day, probably more than half the class say it's read aloud. Um, Last year, yes, it was last year. Did we run out of time? Mm, I don't remember if it was last year or okay, all the years before last because of COVID. So all the years before last, we always read "Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry." Yes, it is a heavy, deep book, and it has a lot of racial topics that are very sharp. They're sometimes even painful to read when you're reading about the burning at Barry. So a man gets set on fire. A little black girl gets pushed down and then forced to apologize to a white girl. And then the mom is explaining because you had to apologize because they think she's better than you because she's white, and they have that conversation. Also, another boy gets really beat up. He gets beat up. He's black. Um, and we talk about those concepts. We talk about, was it fair? Was it right? What should we do different? What's the problem in the thinking of the person who thought that she was better because she was white? And we talk about those things. So I definitely talk about race. And did have a moment last year where I almost kind of felt bad. We were talking about natives. We were talking about natives being forced out of their land and put on reservations. And one of the students, he raised his hand and he said, I kind of feel bad that I'm white. And then I hesitated, like, do I focus too much on this? Is this inappropriate of me? It's in our Washington State history book. Um, do I have any cause for him to feel that way? I really am just trying to give history as history should be given, um, without painting the picture that African workers, air quotes, African workers were brought over on ships. No, absolutely not. So, um,
No, that is absolutely amazing that you take the time to do that and to pick those books that have those heavy issues. And I think it's really important because
mhm.
I wasn't raised in a racist family or anything, but we also didn't really talk about race that much.
Yeah,
But at my elementary school and my middle school, we did.
yeah,
And I think that's really what shaped me into the person I am today.
yeah.
So I really commend
Thank
you
you.
for taking the initiative and doing that. I think it's really
Yeah,
important.
and there's part of me that feels also like when they're 9 and 10, this is the time they need to hear it. Yeah, you have to let them consider their own thoughts before the bigotry of some of their parents and members are going to influence them to unjustifiably dislike a whole entire group of people. So I hope that I build compassion and empathy, and I hope that they leave my classroom with compassion and empathy and skepticism. Like I
Yes.
definitely, like, even if we're doing something, and I'll even sometimes make a claim and I'll say something like something massively huge. Oh, there is a purple dinosaur in my garage this morning, and he said, if you don't bring me a piece of candy every single day, you fail the fourth grade and you don't get to go on with your classmates. And they, of course, don't believe me. Um, and I'll compare, like, so usually that happens when we're talking about having to provide evidence from the text because we're doing a writing assignment, what it means to provide evidence. So I'll say I can make any claim I want to, but do you believe me if I don't provide evidence? So then we'll go back to our writing assignment and then, okay, so you can't just say bubblegum is made from sap from the trees unless you're going to prove to me by citing the text. So, um,
All right, the final question, I suppose. we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Not really the elephant in the room. I think we've both mentioned it a few times. How is it teaching during COVID?
It is heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. I love teaching for a multitude of reasons, but I would say the highlight of my days are when I get to interact and have those interpersonal relationships with my students. And I definitely bond with my class. We become a class family. We even call ourselves a classily, for family, classily. To not feel that bond, like this year, I have a new set of students and we're not in the same room. And I'm not getting to, like, sure, I do a read aloud, but it is just me recording myself reading and then posting a video, and maybe only 3 kids actually watch it. We're not actually sharing stories together like we would do in the years past. um, but the highlight of my teaching days, I was saying, it's not yes, the interpersonal relationships, but seeing the light bulbs go off, seeing the moment they have that epiphany when I'm teaching them a new concept and I see their eyes light up because, oh my gosh, give me another one, give me another one. I totally understand long division, give me another one. And they are hungry and so excited to be aware, to know that they got it, to know that I can give them any problem and they're going to be able to solve it successfully because they have mastered that concept. So for me, COVID is 10 times the amount of work. Making lessons is so much harder because I still have to plan for the lesson. I still have to teach the lesson. I have to record the lesson now and then edit the lesson and then upload the lesson and publish the lesson and then cross my fingers that the students will actually watch the lesson. And then one might watch it in the morning and have a question and then they ask that question, and then somebody watches it in the afternoon and they have the same question and they ask that question. So I'm bombarded by repeat questions all day long, which if we were in the classroom, one kid would have asked one, and I would have answered it and addressed that misconception right from the beginning, and we would have dealt with that right there, in the then and now. But now that doesn't happen. It's like every kid needs one-on-one tutoring just to address any misconceptions they may have had over the one video, and there's not enough hours in the day for every single subject to have the same conversation over and over and over. It's exhausting. And then, like, having to also not just give them a piece of paper and say, here, I would like you to do this assignment to show me that you've mastered long division. I have to create the lesson, publish it in Google Classroom, and then have kids turning it in, like trickling in. One, there might be 2 kids on this hour, 3 kids the next hour, maybe no one else for a day or two. And I'm always having to click back, and I can't just like grade a stack of papers in one sitting that takes me 20 minutes. I have to like go to that student's portfolio, open up their assignment, grade it independently because, it was turned in at a random time of day, way late. So it's exhausting mentally and emotionally, and I don't feel like I'm very effective because the classroom conversations are they just don't happen. We have live Zooms every day, actually 2 live Zooms every day. Our district says 1 is the mandated, like you need to have 45 minutes. But my team level, we wanted 1 in the morning and in the afternoon. So we meet with them for 15 minutes in the morning and then 45 minutes in the afternoon, to like address any questions. Did you understand the material? But most of the time, the kids that show up to those afternoon Zooms, they don't have questions about the content. They just miss their peers. They just want to see other kids. They just want to hear their voices. They just want to interact and have some social interaction. So I feel more like I'm conducting therapy for kids during those moments, just getting them to talk to one another and see that other kids still exist, to feel like they're part of a class. And I didn't even mention how many angry parent phone calls, like they're frustrated because the computer is not working or their kid doesn't understand an assignment and they don't even know how to say the word predicate. And they spent how many hours Googling. I'm like, don't use Google. Don't use Google. Just use me. Just reach out. Don't waste your time. But then at the same time, having to be emotionally supportive for these parents who are stressed out, as if my own stress, like I'm stressed out with my day as well. and then to have to be their emotional coach. And they call you when they're at their breaking point. So I get the worst of all my parents. And they are good. They are good parents, but they have called in tears, yes, because they don't understand fourth grade math. So COVID's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and everyone's exhausted, but we have a social responsibility, and I understand why we're doing it, and I support it, and I get that it's important. But I still feel COVID fatigue, and I'm still saddened by the way it's changed my job. And I definitely feel definitely like I'm less effective as a teacher. I can provide all this material. I can provide this recorded lesson and provide the assignment that goes along with it, but I can't actually see my students understanding it. Like, I don't know if their big brother did that assignment for them. I don't hear their voice saying, oh, so if I do this and this, then I know I get it. I get it. So I miss out on all that.
I think this is the perfect time for me to say this.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching this video and you're thinking, my freedom, I don't have to wear a mask, I can go out to the bars and mingle with as many people as I want, I'm invincible, I'm indestructible. Think about this situation. Think about these kids. Wear your mask, do what you're told, let's get through this together. Let's get our kids back to school, and we can get back to normal at some point here. But just be a team player.
Absolutely.
Let's get out there. Let's kick some ass. Let's get through.
Yes, I'm nodding my head. Yep. Through all of it. Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, no, the pleasure. Thank you. It was just...
All right. Well, it was nice talking to you.
Yeah,
All
you too.
right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.